Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today is our final presentation on Gita, chapter by chapter. We'll be doing overviews of Gita, but today we are doing chapter 18, verses 74 to 78. So I'm going to read the version from Sri Aurobindo, and then Yogeshwar will be commenting. Then you're welcome to comment on these verses, and then we are going to open it up to everybody on what they got from this series of Gita meetups. Sanjay said, I heard this wonderful discourse of Vasudeva and of the great-souled Arjun, causing my hair to stand on end. Through the grace of Vyas, I heard this supreme secret, this yoga, directly from Krishna, the divine master of yoga, who himself declared it. O King, remembering this wonderful and sacred discourse of Krishna and Arjun, I rejoice again and again, remembering also that most marvelous form of Krishna. Great is my wonder, O King. I rejoice again and again. Wherever is Krishna, the master of yoga, and wherever is Arjun, the archer, assured are there glory, victory, and prosperity. And there also is the immutable law of the right. Yogeshwar.
Sanjaya uvacha ityaham vasudevasya parthasya cha mahatmanah samvadamimam ashrausham adbhutam romaharshanam. Now Sanjay is telling Dhritarashtra that this is what I think about the Gita. The Gita has ended now. And Sanjay is giving his ending remarks to Dhritarashtra. I have listened to this wonderful conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And he calls both of them by the names of their parents, like the children of their parents. Like Vasudeva is Vasudevasya apatyam Vasudeva. He is the son of Vasudeva. That's where Vasudev comes from. And then he calls Partha, meaning Prithayaha apatyam Puman, meaning that Pritha, meaning Kunti, the son of Kunti, who is Arjuna, calls both of them by their parents' names. And when you call someone by their, like from their parents' name, it's like calling them lovingly. Like, I don't have any other words. I can't call them directly. I can't quote them directly. What I'm trying to do now is quote them through their parents, that these people are really wonderful. And their conversation was even at a third level now. So he calls Partha a Mahatma. Mahatma is Mahan Atma. He is the one Atma, the one Jiva that could be in front of Krishna and reveal all this from Krishna and be able to get all this from Krishna. Because as we know, a conversation that is held is from both sides. Sanjay is saying that I do understand what Krishna brings to the table in this conversation, but I would like you to understand what Arjuna brings to the conversation. If it was somebody else apart from Arjuna in front of Krishna, would Krishna have opened himself up like this? would he have said the statements that he has said? Or maybe he would have just held back on something and said something. What we mean by holding back is that somebody is not wanting to hear the true statements of tattva, is not wanting to hear the statements of truth. Another thing is that they do not have bhakti. Some may not have the tapas, the austerity that is needed. If they do not have, even Krishna is telling Arjuna, do not give them the Gita. Do not tell them this conversation. Would Krishna himself have told this conversation to a person who would not have bhakti? So Sanjay is saying, no, that is why Arjuna is a Mahatma. It is like any other time, we know that there were these great people who from the same literature, from the same Vedas, or from the scriptures, they could extract this and bring it to the world. The same is happening from Krishna, because Krishna is this wonderful person. He himself is in the world, but to extract this conversation from him, you need a person like Arjuna in front of him, who is a friend and is able to say that I am willing to become a Shishya. Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam in chapter 2, that I am willing to become your Shishya. Tell me what is right and wrong. Samvadamimam ashrosham adbhutam romaharshanam. I have listened to this, and this conversation was not normal. It was something that made all the hairs of my body just stand up. Romaharshanam. Vyasa prasadat shrutavan etad guhyam aham param yogam yogeshwarat krishnat sakshat kathayata swayam. By the grace of Veda Vyasa, I have received this divine, divine siddhi that I can listen to Krishna and Arjuna, however far they were within the field of the war. Still, I could listen to them directly, and he is saying this, that I listen to it directly from Krishna. It is not that somebody else told me. And there is an essence to it, listening to it from Krishna directly. There is a difference whereby if somebody else tells you what Krishna wanted to say, even though they do not want to put in something, they will have put in something when they're telling you, because they put in themselves into it. When I am detailing something towards you, there is an essence of me that will come with it. When Krishna is saying something to you, there is an essence of Krishna that will come with it. If there is Arjuna who is telling you, then the essence of Krishna will be there, and the essence of Arjuna will also be there. Now, the way Arjuna understood it is how he will tell you. It will not be the direct. But Sanjay here is saying, I heard it directly from Krishna. What did I hear? Yogam. I heard this yoga. And whom did I hear it from? Yogeshwarat Krishna. I heard it from the master of yoga. Sakshat Kathayata Swayam. And it's not even that I got it from parampara or from tradition. No, I listened to him directly. Rajan Sansmritya Sambadamimam Adbhutam Keshavarjuna Yo Punyam Rishyami Cha Muhurmuhu. Oh, great king, Dhritarashtra, I know you are the king. I am telling all this in front of you. But in a way, when truth befalls you, you tend to forget whom you're even talking to. So he knows he's talking to Dhritarashtra, But all the other context, that the war is happening and Dhritarashtra's sons are on the other sides, and he wants to favor his son's side, and he doesn't want to favor Pandava's side. All that context is aside now, for now, because truth itself, the tattva itself, yatharthatva, is so great that when it befalls you, all the other contexts, they just fall into their own place. They don't have their own greatness now. What their greatness comes from is the greatness of the unmanifest. If you know the greatness of the unmanifest now, the greatness of the manifest just falls into the unmanifest. That is why here Sanjay is saying that remembering it, and saying remembering it in English doesn't bring so much, but saying it in Sanskrit, Rajan Sansmritya Samvadamimam Adbhutam, it brings a different flavor to it. And you know, the same poetry that will talk to you in maybe French wouldn't really talk to you in English. It would talk to you in French if you knew French, but it wouldn't really talk to you in English because it's a translation now. And there is a way that it talks to you, even though the translation is right, but the translation won't talk to you. So the way Sanjay is saying that, remembering it, and the way he's even like, he can't use any other words. He's saying that samvadamima madbhutam, and he's already said it 2 verses earlier, and he's going to say it again, that this conversation was out of this world. I cannot even think about such a conversation happening again, or having happened before this. It has just happened right now. And whenever truth befalls you, that is how truth comes upon you. It comes upon you as new as it can, because it feels like nobody else would have known this before. This is like raw truth that has come to me. Keshavarjunayo punyam, rishyami cha muhurmuhu. This conversation of Keshava and Arjuna, it is punyam, first of all. Like, it is not a normal conversation. And just listening to it, remembering it continuously, I have this form of bliss within myself, rishyami. And not only once, or not only one time, but however many times I remember it, I have this bliss within me. It is not like a form of entertainment that the more times you see it, the more times you feel like, I've already seen it, and you know what is going to come again. You know what is going to come afterwards. It's like it's new every time you listen to it. It's new every time you remember it. It's new every time you read it. That is why there's a tradition of Patha in India. That tradition is unique to India. Like the tradition of Patha. Patha means you read the same thing again and again, day in, day out. The same. You'll read the same Gita, day 1, day 2, day 3, until the end of your life. And it will bring new things to you every day. And that was an art. Like you can get something new every day reading the Gita itself. In a way, the words have already stuck to you. That's fine. But what you're getting to is new every day. The tattva you're getting to every day is new. What you're getting to is not the context of the conversation, is not the intellect of the conversation, is not only the emotions of the conversation. When it is the tattva you want to get to, is when you can read the Gita every day in, day out, and yet get something new out of it every day. Vismayo me mahan rajan rishyami cham punah punah. What here trying to say that I am remembering it. Yes. Taccha sansmritya sansmritya rupa matyudbhutam harehe vismayo me mahan rajan rishyami cha puna puna. And then I am just looking at Krishna at this point in time. And he has seen that Arjuna has received what I wanted him to receive. And even receiving is like language, but then because Arjuna was that even before. But know the context that he has become something new. He has flowered. It was like he was a bird and now he has flowered. It's something different. It's that scent, that freshness that you get out of a flower. Now, when a person flowers in front of you, like you've seen him from the stage that he was a closed flower, a bird, and he has flowered totally. When you see each and every stage of that happening, there is something different that you see. You don't only see the flower physically, you see the transition itself, like from a bird into a closed flower, into an open flower, into flowering. When you're able to see that, in a way, you also flower. You also start opening. That is what Sanjay is saying that has started happening to me. That I am looking at Krishna, I am looking at Arjuna, and Krishna is so happy that Arjuna has come to this state. This rupa, this form that I am seeing of Krishna, I have not seen it at any other time. Because he has been able to bring somebody to the path of Brahman, into Brahman. And he's going to use the same words that Vismayo me Mahan Rajan. And you know, when do you use Vismaya in Sanskrit? It's like you don't have words to explain it. It's like the end of words. And now you have to use a word, but you can't put it in words. The last word you'll use is like Vismaya. It's a wonder. You now cannot put into actual words. So this is the brim of words. This is like the boundary of words. Vismayo me Mahan Rajan. Rishyami cha puna puna. And now I cannot get any other words to say what I actually have gotten. So I'm going to say the same words. Rishyami cha puna puna. Rishyami is used again. Like I'm just getting into the ananda again. Just even telling it to you, I am getting all this. That's what he's saying. That, you know, I've listened to it, that's fine. And even at that time, I had flowered in a way. But even telling it to you again, there's a difference I'm feeling now. I'm flowering again, flowering more. I'm becoming more of a flower. More of what Krishna wanted anyone who listened to this become. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara, Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Matir Mama. This is what I feel right now, knowing the truth. Matir Mama. This is how I view it. Wherever there is Yogeshwara Krishna, wherever there is the master of yoga, who is Krishna, and wherever there is this great archer, who is Partha, in that same place, Tatra, in that same place, there would be Shri, which is Kirti, which is all that you can think about. Now, when we talk about fame, there is a way of looking at it that it is the destruction of a person, like when he gets into fame. But then look at it from the perspective of a person who is so talented and then he becomes famous. So he deserves that fame. He deserves that kirti within those people. That type of kirti is being talked about. And the vijaya, the winning, is always on that side. Bhutir is also always on that side. And dhruva niti, now he says that niti, that which is right, is always on that side, wherever Krishna and Arjuna are. What he means by niti is that righteousness. And dhruva, meaning that righteousness that can never be imbalanced, it can never be tipped off. It's always there. Firm, standing upright. That is the kind of righteousness I find there. When we're looking at this context of the Gita, the last verse, where Sanjay is telling Dhritarashtra that that is where winning will be, that is where Vijay will be. He has even forgotten he's talking to Dhritarashtra. That is how overwhelmed he is by this conversation. He's like, according to me, that is the side that will win. Like, and not only win, like in the context of like win the war, but then win in every other context. Win in the form of righteousness, they will be the ones who are right always. Win in the form of even glory, they're the ones who will get all the glory of the Mahabharata. And not that the war has not yet ended. When Sanjay is telling Dhritarashtra this, war has not yet ended. It's like the 9th day of the war that Dhritarashtra calls Sanjay, what is happening, I need to know in detail, because I cannot sleep at night. Now, the war is not yet ended, yet Sanjay is saying that is where victory will obviously be. That is where glory will obviously be. Yeah, I actually think that Kirti should and Shri should be taken to glory rather than fame, like the context of the word. Like glory means more of Kirti and Shri. So they will get the glory of it. And there's nothing else to say about that. Like he makes his end statement that they're the ones who will have the victory. Like imagine saying that in front of your own king. Now, this is not something small that you're telling a friend or you're telling a person who you love. No, you're not only giving your view to that person. It is like you're giving your view to a person who would like the other side to win. And not only any other person who you can share your views transparently with. What Sanjay is saying here is, I know you're my king. Yes, but this truth, as I have seen it, is so overwhelming that this is what will happen. Know it from me. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supnishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Moksha Sannyasa Yogo Namashtadashodhyayah Iti Srimad Gita Samapta.
Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. All right. So, wow. So I want to comment a little bit about Sanjay. So firstly, I have actually 4 points. First point that you made is that Arjun is a deserving listener. I will add to that is that Arjun is ready to hear. Just like Duryodhana, just like Dronacharya asked his teacher, are you ready to? He's in a state, like, because Krishna has been with Arjun throughout his life. He's not talked about this before. He's talking about it now because Arjun is actually in the ripe situation to hear such a fundamental truth that really enables him to understand, all his emotions, all his determination to action, all his ideas have failed him as he stands between these two armies. And he's a profoundly moral man. And he is the best friend of Krishna. So from Krishna's point of view, he deserves to know, and he's ready to hear these deep ideas. So that was the first point. And the form in which it is presented is a conversation. This is Krishna himself, Brahma, speaking about himself to a deserving person. For the first time, it is becoming explicated. I want to take a moment to talk about Sanjay. Sanjay is actually a very interesting character here. He is the one who is actually telling us all of this Gita. He is saying, this is what Arjun said, this is what happened, this is what is happening. He's telling this to Dhritarashtra. Now, Dhritarashtra is the father of Duryodhana. He's the king on the opposite side of Arjun. Yet Sanjay is a profoundly moral person who has a very deep understanding of what Krishna is saying. Naneshwar's commentary does such a beautiful job of describing this, because Dhritarashtra again and again is saying, but tell me what's happening to my sons, with what is happening to on the battlefield. He is all concerned. And then he makes a comment, Sanjay, in his own mind, that the king is blind, because even when Krishna is telling him something, just Sanjay is relating some profound ideas of Krishna, his mind is not focused on it. So he is blind, not only with his eyes, but his inability to see Brahma when it is standing in front of him. And when Sanjay is telling him about it, and Sanjay goes from these emotions, because he is, as Yogeshwar beautifully pointed out, he is just beside himself, because he has heard this for the first time. The last point I want to make is that of the concept of again and again. That is fundamental to the Indian thought, that you keep focused on truth again and again. That is what dhyana is about. That is what practice of mantras is all about. It is not just a repetition, mechanical repetition. It is reminding you, it is bringing you the truth of this. So Gita we have gone through, but this is only the first time. The only way it actually helps you is repeatedly looking at it again and again and again and again throughout your life. And it is so deep that every time you look at it, even if you did it every day, every time you look at it, you are going to see new things. You're going to see new connections. So it is a permanent fountain of knowledge that you can keep coming back to, and you will see more. And as you grow, actually you will see things, new things, because you have grown. It is so deep. And all great works are like that. It is so deep that you can see only what you can see. What you can see is limited by your capacity to see. As you work with it, your capacity to see goes up, and you see more and more and more. So that's what I wanted to say. Now I want to open it up for comments about Gita as a whole. You're welcome to talk about this. Mostly, I'm interested in figuring out interested in hearing from you about what you got from Gita. So go ahead and type exclamation mark. Please take your time to speak. I know it is a hard question to answer, so just speak your mind, and would love to hear what you have to say. Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to speak. Yes, actually, if you have, Madhav, folks, if you have any questions about this particular part, you are welcome to ask it. You know what, we can actually include both questions and this together, so we can go back and forth. I just wanted it to be a conversation. We have seen the value of conversations, so we'll start with Madhav. Madhav, go ahead.
So today I had a thought, and the thought was, when I was trying to review the things that I've learned, is any of this true at all? Like, that's sort of a skeptical question. So my question was, knowing all that we know now after reading the Bhagavad Gita, should we go about this by assuming that this is the truth, and that this is the truth, and we have to find a proof by living through it? Or should we have that spirit of skepticism and try to see if this is actually the truth?
Excellent question. Thank you. Yogeshwar, go ahead.
Yes, so this actually depends on your own experience about this scripture itself. What happens is, if you have seen the truth in this, you will no longer have any questions for it. You'll be like, this was actually what I was looking for when we talk about truth. Because everybody's concept about the truth is totally different. Somebody is saying something is true, another is saying something else is true. So what I would say is that if you still have some questions, then experiment it. But then, you see, the thing about experiment is that experiment it in a way that, is it true or not? That means you'll have to change yourself. That means, where you're experimenting this, it's not your social life, it's not your family life, it is you that you'll have to experiment it with. So when you experiment it with yourself, that means that you are going to change in the process. Why? Because you are experimenting this. You're going to experiment with the three gunas. You have to know which guna is prevailing at what time. That is when you can know whether this is true or not. When you're experimenting it, what you should have in your mind is that you're going to experiment with it, but you're also going to change in the process. There's going to be a change that will come upon you. When that change comes upon you, accept it, because it's part of the experiment. It's part of the process. And there's also another way of viewing this, that this is true. This is what I was looking for. Now, this is for the person who has seen the Gita from another perspective, that this is what I was looking for. There's no doubt this is true. For that person, I would like to say that, so don't stop there if this is true. Take it in within your life. Because what happens is, normally, like philosophical truths, like we know that some things are true, like philosophically, yes, maybe they're true. But then those things are just for the intellect. They just stay there in our intellect. we don't need to put them in our lives. Those truths are just, maybe if they're there, they will affect us. If they're not there, they will not affect us. But what the Gita is, to know whether it's true or not, you have to apply it within yourself. And even though you've known it's true, then you have to accept it within yourself. In both processes, you have to allow the Gita to submerge into you. That is when you will know what the truth is.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. So the way I would, I think of this is that Gita throughout has a profound respect for individual mind and profound respect for anybody who is trying to ask any question about the nature of reality. So that is the most important thing. You can see how delighted, and Naneshwar does a very good job of commentary of how delighted Krishna is whenever Arjuna asks a question. And the question could be of form, you said this and it doesn't make sense to me. Why did you tell me that? You said this, but you also said this. How can this both be true? So any kind of questions are good. So that is core part of the tradition of Gita and Indian thought. Secondly, again, Krishna himself is interacting with Arjuna on this. And that's a very good model. Krishna says, do not do this because I tell you. Try to reach the Brahma within yourself. When you see it for yourself, when you experience it for yourself, then you act from it. So that, it's not about assuming it to be true. It is asking your questions to yourself and to others until you can see the truth of things and then acting based on that. Again, even at the final end, Krishna asks Arjuna. Krishna doesn't say, now go to war. No. He says, have you listened to what I have said? And have your doubts been resolved? And then Arjuna says, yes, I've listened closely and this is what I think. So there is that you have to understand things in your own way, in your own time. And it does not matter how long it takes, in the sense that you want to understand quicker, but you want to understand it yourself. And thinking that kind of pretending that you understand or taking the word for it, even if you were to do it today, it's actually harmful than to take years to try to grasp the truth for yourself. So that's what I would say. Thank you, Madhav. Great question. Folks would love to hear what you think of Gita. So we'll start with Joe. Joe.
So it's such a big question, and I had thought about it on like kind of a couple different levels today, but yesterday. But it's just such a challenging question because when we come here, we kind of have our perceptions changed as to each lesson, and then you see how deep they are, and just to integrate one of these concepts is very, very difficult to do. One of the things that I thought about a lot was the idea of expectation, and kind of not having expectations and kind of distancing ourselves from, and this is through not being attached to the material world, to the sensory world. And I feel like ultimately what this is creating is a more, shall I say, faith-based approach to some other philosophies that I've actually adopted, which is one of them is Stoicism. It's actually much more deep. It provides me with, how shall I say it, the spiritual aspect of it, something much deeper that transcends rational thought. So for me, things like even understanding things like Om or meditation, and how those, just how deep that what saying Om really means, that is, something that will transform me. Seeing, again, I've said this in the past, seeing the God in yourself and that point of self-discovery, which I'm still working through, but recognizing that the God in everyone else is something that I continually remind myself. And truthfully, that's been more powerful than any kind of therapy or thinking that I could have come up with, or rational thinking that I could have come up with, is because you start to see that we're all, we're all one. And you have this profound respect for everybody else, and no matter what they do. And so, for me, that's another area is that, just even going through it gets deeper, especially chapter 13, when I was thinking about this and the concept of self. And that's where you kind of get into the metaphysics of it. But understanding the difference between the knower, the field, and objects, it's a baseline for understanding a lot of philosophy. But even it also helps you understand the center and the periphery in a much more deeper way. Those are my initial thoughts. I mean, if I were to say in the most practical sense, how it's changed me is that it's how I view other people, how I view meditation, and how I'm starting to look at life a little bit more like a journey rather as an attachment to things, which is when you're talking about relationships with people, that goes a very far way, especially if you're about to lose them. You look at it as a journey as opposed to, being attached to the forms. So that's a very, very deep thing. It also calls out a lot of my shortcomings. I think the closer you get to the Gita, the more you're really going to see some things about yourself that you may not like, or where you fall short. And it does help me with that.
Wonderful.
So
thank you. Thank you, Joe. Great comments. Thank you. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to comment on whatever people are saying, because this is a chance for us to go through some of the key concepts and what we have gotten from it. So I will go ahead and make my comments. And Yogeshwar, after I'm done, if you want to add more things, if you want to elaborate on more things, please feel free to do that. Okay, so firstly, Joe, this is fantastic. The number of points that you put on the table here is just incredible. And thank you so much. I think the center and the periphery is the most powerful idea that you get from it. And the center, there is another way of looking at it. It's like center and the world, where world is shaped by the center. Periphery is when you get attached to part of this world so that it remains away from the center. So the idea of expectations of attachment, holding on to things. It's all about focus on part of the world while turning your back on the center. The deep message of Gita is that center and the world are one. So the material and the spiritual are one. And it is one thing. You're seeing God in others is a good example. That means you're seeing Brahma in others, and you're seeing Brahma in yourself and in everything. It is when you take apart and turn your back on the whole that you are attached and you're going away from both the world and the center. You talked about faith and devotion and the place of rational thought. Gita starts with a profound acceptance of what is. That is very deep idea. And when people get attached to things, people's attention is fragmented, like most modern minds are, and modern methods of dealing with are. They do not focus. They don't ask the question, what is? What is reality? This is a metaphysical question. What is its nature? And they get focused on, they work on, their emotions are driven by, their thoughts are dominated by that, by the periphery. Again, it's a question of periphery versus the center. The way Gita handles the integration of emotion, thought, and action is an integrated way. There is bhakti. Instead of faith, I think devotion is a better word. It is your full heart, with the fullest of your heart, you're focused on the center. And consequently, you also have a devotion and love for the world and for other beings. And that devotion is completely consistent with the fullest use of your mind and rational faculty when you're trying to understand the world or the center. So there is an integration between reason and emotion here. There is an integration between the reason and emotion and action. The karma yoga, which is about doing the right thing. Bhakti yoga, which is your devotion to Brahma. And Jnana yoga, your commitment to understanding the world and the center which is shaping the world. They're all together. The God in us, I think, is a brilliant example of all these points. Because when you say namaste, you're saying the God in me greets the God in you. Automatically, in that one action, you are not only looking at a person, the physical person in front of you, but you're also acknowledging the deep spirit in them and deep spirit in you, which is the center, which is the center that is shaping everything. So at once, you're embracing the world and the center in a concrete action. That is why it is as powerful as it is. Regarding shortcomings, I think the concept of gunas is very powerful. You understand what you are capable of. You are capable of focusing on the center and be sattvic. You are capable of being lazy and ignorant and turning your back on the center, which is tamasic. And you are capable of getting interested in, getting attracted to, doing things in the world while forgetting the center. So you're capable of all these three things, and you do all these three things, and all these three things have their place in life. And it gives you a very good matrix to see what you're doing when, and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And the reason it does it is that it has established the center and periphery. Evanik was saying this yesterday, that the center and periphery has been the deepest idea for her, because she's able to say, is this from the center or is this from the periphery? Am I turning towards the center right now, or turning my back towards the center, or looking sideways, which is rajasic? Sideways is rajasic. So it is it is very deep in its psychology, which is these gunas. So thank you so much. Now let me turn it over to Yogeshwar. Folks, anybody else who would like to talk about what they got, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Yogeshwar, go ahead.
Yes, so basically about the gunas, last point that you made. One thing to note about that is, Krishna here is pointing out that if you're such a person, this is the type of guna that will prevail in you. If you're such a person, this will happen. And if a guna is there, then particular types of activities will happen in a particular way. Why Krishna is saying that is, first, pay your attention to that. Like, pay attention to the activities you're doing, pay attention to the thoughts that you're having, pay attention to the way you behave all around, whether it's in your thoughts, whether it's in your actions, and even your emotions. Pay attention to them. Having paid attention to them, then you realize that, is this the best way to do it? Or is there a better way to do it? That's why they're categories. Like, am I at my best when I'm doing this in a particular way? Or can I give, or can I do a particular action in the best way possible? Because what Krishna says is, when you do it in the best way possible, that is the yoga itself. When you do it out of kushalata, like yoga karma kaushalam, when you do it out of kushalata, meaning the best way you can do it, that slight hand that you can give to it to make it the best, that is when you're in the yoga. And you can't do that without paying attention to what is happening right now. So first, know what is happening right now, and then change what could be changed. Because there are also those facets of life that can't be changed. And there are those that can be changed for the better. So there should be that distinction in the gunas.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yogeshwar. I'll make one more point. The Indian mind has focused on the consciousness for a very long time, much longer than the West. So the primary value, one of the primary values that you get from looking at this Indian corpus is to be more conscious, is to be more aware, self-aware, notice things, what is going on in you more. Be able to concentrate your attention on things that you should be paying attention to. Notice when you're not. Develop the practice of spending more and more time on things that you should be paying attention to. So this entire technology of consciousness and directing the consciousness is experienced as spirituality. Spirituality and consciousness of being aware of the deepest part of you. That is spirituality. So it is one and the same thing. And this Indian philosophy in Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere is significantly more advanced than the West on this particular issue. Thank you, Joe. Great comments. Next up is Brian and Penny. Please take your time to talk about everything, anything that you want to talk about.
So I'm the one who volunteered. I have a list of, I guess, insights or events that occurred in participating in these sessions. The first is the distinguishing between curiosity and skepticism. And that was really a gateway for me to being open to what was in the Gita. And honestly, it's been a gateway for me now to be open to more things in the world. I tend to be quieter too. The skepticism was a source of much of my comments. So I don't try to really compare the Gita. I just, that was my first step, was just to listen. And then when I listened, this was an event, I did recognize some of it as just absolutely true through my own experience. It's not like I puzzled it out or I saw the logic in the Gita. I recognized it through my life experience that this or that perspective in the Gita is true. And that's what has led me to being willing to explore more the entirety of it and really being open to it. Really along the lines that Yogeshwar mentioned, experimentation. And I guess the step I would add is that I think it's worth the experimentation because of those moments where I recognize the truth through my own experience. I did have moments, I think it should be mentioned, I did have moments of really bodily responses to things that were being revealed in the Gita, and that was telling, I think. Felt warm or chills or parts of me opening up. It was really quite remarkable. This different words have been used, but the idea of a witness within yourself, the witness that can that observes events which are both can be mental or physical, emotions, thoughts, events in the outside of yourself. This concept of the witness, I think, has been really helpful for me. And I guess with that, the idea that thoughts and emotions are also and can be seen as part of the external world, external to this witness, which is more constant and stable. So I guess I am interested in exploring it more and even repeating in the ways you've mentioned. But I will say that already I do have a lot of revelations just in daily life as I go through my life. The one general revelation, I'll share one general and then one very recent. A general revelation is that I feel like my lifestyle and the lifestyle of my family and most people I see around me is very intense. It's resource intense, it's activity intense, it's time intense, and very busy and active. Maybe to the detriment of other aspects of life. And I see that in a way that I hadn't seen earlier. And then there's just more an obsession with making life more intense all the time. That's a general revelation. And then, or maybe I have two here. I think there are two outcomes from the Gita that I was paying attention earlier on. Often in the conversations, what was a bottom line, and a bottom line was peace of mind. I think peace of mind can be like a signal or a sign that you're on a good path, as regards the Gita. And I don't want to say that the awareness is equivalent to peace of mind. That's not true. It could be tamasic or other things, but I think it can be is included in the sattvic approach, the peace of mind. And the other one is that the strength that's Srikant just referenced it through the karma yoga, but I think I would add the word strength to peace of mind, and that's something that's, I think, overlooked, that I feel hasn't been mentioned enough in some of the comments that are coming out of the group, is that you also can obtain a strength from this stability, this following these paths. And then just my most recent revelation, that just, like I say, it's almost daily. Today I was reading, I subscribe to a good news network. I read good news, not necessarily bad news. And there was an article posted from the Harvard Business Review on how to increase your productivity. And this article was taken from a guide. It was all about meditation. Meditation increases. This is for business managers, and it was written by Harvard Business School professors. They said they've been working on this for the past 25 years and put it together in a book of 4 or 5 articles called The Guide to Productivity. And it really reads like the high points, or 5 of the high points from the Gita: concentration, focus, witness, meditation. So it's just, that's so striking to me to see that today. So that's all I've got.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Again, Yogeshwar, I'm going to make my comments, and then feel free to comment on anything that you would like. And folks, we'd love to hear from everybody. So it doesn't have to be elaborate. Even if it is short, it's fine. Whatever comments you have. First point you made about curiosity versus skepticism. The skepticism is all about saying no, and curiosity is all about saying yes. Curiosity is saying yes to the world, yes to the core principles, and mind focused on getting to it. Whereas skepticism is saying no to everybody. It's a very elaborately self-deceptive way of saying no without actually saying no. So I think curiosity it captures it. It's curiosity about the world. Second, is you said that you saw it as true through your own experience. And that's exactly what Gita and the entire Indian tradition insist. It is not asking you to believe blindly. It is asking you to go to your own experience and act only from that. I remember one of the most stunning things that I read as a kid was work by Vivekananda. And Vivekananda was saying, is one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century on this. And he was saying that please do not listen, please do not take anything I'm saying to you as the gospel. Please question everything and accept only those things that you yourself can ground in your own experience. It doesn't matter how little it is or how much it is. If you can't ground something, do not accept it. So that is very powerful point. I really liked your point about bodily responses. This is integrated, the mind, emotions, actions, and body is very much part of that. So absolutely, that is very natural consequence. And also you said that you have daily revelations, and that's exactly, it's a tremendous sign of, that's what an active mind will do, because these ideas are so deep ideas that connection between that and your everyday life will take time to unfold, because you have your old ideas of how you think about things. And as you master these ideas, you end up seeing more and more. And every day, if you are attentive, you will notice something, multiple times a day. So absolutely. You talked about the witness that observes. That's a very deep point. The seer, it is your consciousness, it is your ability of being aware, and it has a steadiness. So in chapter 2, they talk about sthita prajna, where you have this steady intelligence, steady wisdom, and everything is kind of passing by you. You are not ignoring it, but you are not swayed by it. Your consciousness remains when the thoughts, the actions, and emotions pass through you, pass over you, you remain. You talked about the modern American life as being resource and activity intensive. And absolutely, it is focused largely on the periphery, and not enough attention is being paid to the center. This is the same point that Carl Jung was making about the spiritual problem of modern man. We have been enormously successful in transforming our world, and we are gleefully in the process of doing that. And that is great. I love it. And that is the reason we have the long lives that we have. We have the technology that we have, so we can talk to each other like this, have the leisure to be able to do that. It's tremendously valuable. But in the process, we have forgotten to focus on our consciousness, our center. And as the Harvard Business Review is pointing out, that is what you need to do in order to be more effective, because what you're trying to do is to act from the center so that it is more effective. Instead of just going round and round, it is being able to move from the center. So you described things in terms of peace of mind and strength. The way, connecting this up to the idea of center and periphery. This is all about being able to stand at the center. That's where the peace of mind is. Again, Gnaneshwar is beautiful at describing this, that when you are at the center, you're at the source of everything. You have peace of mind because there is really nothing that you need to worry about. You have strength because you are at the source. So it's a way of moving towards the center. And closer you are at the center, to the center, you're able to get to the center, the more strength, the more peace of mind that you have. Yogeshwar, would you like to add anything?
So the point on bliss that Brian talked about. Yes, even in the Yoga Sutras, it says that when you do these types of yoga, you'll get to bliss. Now, the way Brian pointed it out was the right way to look at bliss, because what happens is when it's pointed out in the Yoga Sutras, it feels like we should go to do the yoga for bliss. Rather, the way Brian put it was that while you're going on the way, bliss is a sign that you've reached somewhere on the way. That's how they put it. And that's the right way to put it, even in the Yoga Sutras. It's like a signpost on the side of the road, and it's saying that, yes, only this much remaining to go to your goal. So it's that kind of sign, rather than going for bliss on the way. Because now what will happen is they will get stuck on the bliss rather than going on the way.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. Next up is going to be Brian Allenby.
Thank you, Shrikan. It's not going to be easy for me to talk, so my voice might break up at any minute, but I will try. I'd like to start really with my history with the Bhagavad Gita. And I first read the book, must be 25 years ago now. And I've gone through the subsequent years, rereading different versions, trying to get deeper into it. Interestingly, I always go back to the first version I ever read. I now have, I have many copies of the Bhagavad Gita, but I always go back to the first one, which always provides the clearest understanding for me. However, I cannot say I ever got the depth of understanding that I'm getting now. One revelation to me was when you talked about the Janeshwari, which I got a copy of that. I've been trying to read that. I'm finding it hard to get through, but I'm trying to go through that. And that's finding an even deeper level. What I've done over the past few months, we've been doing this, is I succeeded in attending the first several sessions, but then sort of life and etc. got the better of me, and I missed quite a lot in between. The past 4 or 5 sessions, I've managed to start catching up again. But what I need to do and what I intend to do is go back at the beginning on these sessions and go through them again to try and get even deeper. Because what I found over those 25 years, what I find I'm doing is I'm reading and then rereading and not really getting the depth that I would like to. These sessions give me the opportunity to do that. I haven't achieved that yet with any of them, but these sessions give me that opportunity, particularly with the comments from Yogeshwar, which are very deep, very interesting. So my task, although he finishes in 3 or 4 sessions, it doesn't finish for me, because I would really like, I fully intend to start again and go through to get a once and final deeper understanding, which I didn't, over 25 years, I did not succeed in doing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Really, really appreciate this. And I know that when you say that you've studied Bhagavad Gita for 25 years, I know how hard you work on everything. So really, really appreciate your kudos here. Firstly, I think, Yogeshwar has done a fantastic job here. It's kind of combination of knowing the text in Sanskrit, having absorbed, studied multiple commentaries in Sanskrit by people like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and then integrating it in his own way, and then presenting it very simply. And that is the Indian tradition. Okay, I mean, like even Jnaneshwar, when he says, look, I'm talking to you, you have the Brahma within you. He's talking to his listeners. He's saying, you have the Brahma within you. You have the sun within you. I'm mere, firefly, and I'm just trying to throw some light, and you have the sun within you. So go back to that. So, and this is Jnaneshwar, okay? So this is the Indian tradition of learning, what Yogeshwar is doing. So I have kind of this combination of reaction. Firstly, I'm just tremendously grateful and tremendously happy and very impressed. But on the other hand, I'm from the Indian tradition also. And for me, it's like, of course, that's what you do. What else do you do? And that's what you keep doing all your life. It is not just a part of it. You keep doing all your life. And so in that sense, you are seeing the authentic Indian tradition taking on this work. Okay, and that's what it is. And that is part of this work itself. So this tradition came from works like this. And that's what you're seeing. And that's the depth of it. And I strongly encourage everybody to, do what Brian is doing, of going back through all these recordings. I mean, we have an incredible technology of YouTube where everything that we have said is there. And you will notice the same thing that you will notice in Bhagavad Gita itself, that every time you go back to it, you learn more. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Also wanted to say something about Jnaneshwar. For me, reading Jnaneshwar was a humongous step forward. It was very long process because Jnaneshwar writes about, for each verse in Gita, he writes something like 30 to 50 verses in Marathi. So it's much longer work. But he's doing something that has not been done before. He's writing in a vernacular language, Marathi, my language that I grew up speaking. He's also doing something which is even more remarkable. He is writing for people who cannot read. He expects people to listen to his writing and get the meaning of Gita. And he does it through a set of metaphors, connecting it richly with human experience, everyday human experience, in the simplest possible language. And He made Gita accessible to me. I don't know Gita well. Whatever I know, I learned a lot of it from Naneshwar. Partly because I understand the language, as Yogeshwar is pointing out. Some of this meaning is contained in the language itself. And you are constrained by the fact that you don't know Sanskrit. I know Sanskrit somewhat, maybe 85%, 80%, something like that. But still, it's not good enough. Marathi is derived from Sanskrit. So all the words are derived from Sanskrit. So it's very easy to backward engineer and figure out what is there. And Naneshwar is a genuine, great thinker of the highest order. His combination of Shakespeare, he transformed Marathi language more than Shakespeare transformed English. He is Martin Luther, who made the Bible accessible to vernacular speakers who could engage with it on their own. Naneshwar made it accessible to people who could not even read and write and had never been able to access these works, which were only in Sanskrit at that time. He is a philosopher of the order of Aristotle who actually demonstrates what it means to be Aristotelian, of how the world and the center are integrated in so many different ways. This is the idea of Advaita. That's what he does. So I also recommend Naneshwari to you. So there is a lot more that you can get from this, and I encourage you to do that. Yogeshwar.
Actually, no comments.
Okay, thank you. Next up is going to be Madhav. Madhav, go ahead.
Yeah, modern day society, there's a huge emphasis on comfort and seeking comfort. And there's one story in the Bhagavad when Kunti has done a lot of penance and prayers, and Krishna Bhagavan comes to her and says, "What would you like?" And she says, "I want suffering." And he asks, "Why?" "Because when I suffer, I call for God." So my question is, what is the role of suffering and actively seeking discomfort in the path of spirituality?
Thank you, Madhav. Yogeshwar, go ahead.
So one thing we need to realize there is that the suffering Kunta was asking for was because, like, physically, when Krishna sees that something is happening with the Pandavas, he comes and helps them physically. And that is the love that they have in between them, the Pandavas and Krishna himself. So what Kunti was actually asking for is, you constantly stay with us. Yeah. So get to to that level whereby I want to ask for you, like I want you to stay in Hastinapur. Now I can't directly say that stay with us because we all love you that much. What I would say is that because now you always come when we're in suffering, so I will ask for that. I will even ask for that. You get the point? Like I will even ask for that if I am getting you with the suffering. So, because the suffering won't weigh that much for me if you are here. The main point I see from that story of Mahabharata is that look for any way to ask for Brahman, any way that you can get. If you get Brahman, everything else will weigh much more less than when you get Brahman. That is how I look at that story.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. Folks, if you would like to, I would really love to hear from everybody on what they got from Gita. It could be very brief or it could be long, it doesn't matter. Would love to hear from everybody. Okay, so please do type an exclamation mark if you've not already done so. Next up is going to be Brian.
Go ahead.
Okay, this time it's actually me.
Penny, go ahead.
Okay, and just a few thoughts that I had. To me, I found it a real awakening because it was presenting a very different worldview. Parts of it were similar to what I had. have a Christian upbringing, but parts of it were quite different. And I just thought, I was impressed that it seemed to be like a kind of a universal way of looking at spirituality. One of the things that bothered me about Christianity was that, you know, everybody who didn't believe in Christ was condemned. And it just made no sense to me that, you know, God was going to condemn all the people in China and Africa and every place else if they had never heard of it. It just didn't seem to make sense. In this way, though, I think, I mean, the way that they look at it, I think, is kind of saying too, like, everybody, I mean, everybody's kind of part of the system, and whatever you believe, you know, who your God is or something like that, you know, I will come to you in that form. So basically not saying, you know, well, you have to believe in Krishna, but I would say it's whoever you are when you're seeking spirituality, then that's going to be, he's going to respond to you like the universal spirit is going to respond to you in that way. And I thought it was, to me, it just made each person seem very important again, and like a fundamental part of the whole universe, where I think in the West tend to look at some people as more important and some as less important. And if you haven't achieved a certain amount of, you know, fame or money or whatever, then you're not important or not as important. But this way, I mean, everybody is important, everybody can contribute, and everybody has the potential, you know, to develop their spiritual self. And I was thought, you know, with the gunas and some things like that, to me, it helps sometimes to try to understand what's going on in the world. Because a lot of times I look at the way people act and I would just, it just was incomprehensible to me why people were acting like that. But, you know, if you kind of look at the three gunas and stuff, and you start to say, oh, well, you know, that person is under Thomas, or, you know, that's why they're acting like that. And so it was a new way of looking and kind of understanding the world.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Penny. I want to say a couple of things. Firstly, this dignity of individuals is a huge issue. The second is the universality. It's also a big issue. I want to point out something else. I mean, one of the things that we have done here, and partly it is the culture of the 52 living ideas, partly it is Yogeshwar, partly it is me, is we have tried to make Indian ideas accessible to Western audience here. It is not easy to do. Most of the commentaries that you will see on Gita, though they are very deep commentaries, do not relate to the Western audience directly. And we have gone through, I think Yogeshwar has done a tremendous job. You can see the progression of his ability of doing that go up from meetup to meetup. I have tried my best to connect it up with Western ideas, with Western religion, with Gospel of John, with with philosophy. And I think we have succeeded to some extent. Now, the interesting thing is that, when I read the Western corpus, when I read the Gospel of John, and I'm trying to say, what was this intended to mean? The fact that anybody has a right to be a child of God. It is a similar idea, though it is expressed in a different way. The intention, when the ministry starts, it starts with this woman in Samaria. Samaria, not not Judah. A woman, not a man. A woman who has had 5 husbands. So the idea that this is accessible to everybody is there. So there are very, very deep similarities. And in some way, as you and many of you who are familiar with Bible are seeing some things in Gita, I'm seeing the same things the reverse way. I'm seeing that, oh, this is exactly what Gita is saying, though in different words. So all the differences are many of the differences are relatively minor. They can be interpreted and to mean that, okay, this is not accessible to, but when you read it as a whole, the message is actually very, very similar in so many different ways. I mean, the way it is presented is different, that you can, if you ask for forgiveness, you will get it. Ask and you shall receive, that Jesus has already taken care of all your sins. So there are different ways of formulating it. Like Gita talks about it in terms of cycles. You can go away from it and then you can go towards it. And that is completely up to you. So these are different ways of thinking about the same thing. And it is these similarities, which is what I have gotten most from. So folks, we'd love to hear from almost everybody if it's possible. Let's go with Andrea next. Andrea.
Okay, sorry, just a minute.
Sure.
I'm trying to, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm new in this group, so I will be very succinct and perhaps repetitive. I joined this group, and when it was read in chapter 17, or almost at the end, right? I'm a little bit familiar because I practice yoga, like, in the Western tradition, all right? So that was not something that I haven't heard. But what I like to focus here, sharing, all right, with you all, is the metaphor of the battlefield. Because I joined the group when I was like Arjuna in the middle of a battlefield. And I was looking for some supporting group in the meetup. And I thought that, okay, I've already read some Gita before, but we are always rereading because we are always in different stage. So what I was understanding from the battlefield is that we are very much limited to the borders of this field in our everyday. And with the Gita, with these conversations we have had, I start thinking of this battlefield without those borders and transcending this battlefield, which these make us, like in a battlefield, you have this illusion that you are constrained, and then you feel yourself stuck in this field. And with Yokshua and the conversation here, I start looking that battlefield, it was an illusion, and that we should move beyond that. And that is, in our everyday, whatever we are going through. So we start getting very limited in our perspectives. And then we are caught by the illusion of these frames that we construct around this battlefield. And I think the Gita wants to show that things there's no frame, there is no field, and we can transcend them. But it's very hard for us.
Wonderful.
That's what I get, and that's how it helps me to go through my battlefields these days. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yogeshwar, would you like to comment on the concept of battlefield here?
Yes. So the concept of the battlefield, that is constantly there. Like, for example, there's an example given, like in our internals, like in our emotions or in our intellect, in our mind, there's constantly this battlefield going on. Like, what is right, what is wrong in any decision, which way to take. And the way you take will be one of them. You can't take all the roads that your mind presents to you. You have to choose. But then in the middle there, you realize that there is, even in the battlefield, even within the battlefield, there is some concept of the eternal. There is some concept of the center that is there. And that not only helps you to choose, it's not only like a helper for you to choose, like which one to choose, but then it gives you the freedom to choose whatever you want, having the knowledge of what is right and wrong. The first thing it does to you, it just imparts the knowledge onto you. And then you have this clarity about that, obviously this is what I will do. Right? There's no question that should I do this or this. It will just like, obviously I'll just do this, because it's just so prominent that if you have the knowledge, then this is what you'll choose. And then another thing about the battlefield, that is true within each and every one of us. But then there's also this way of interpreting the Gita, that the Gita itself, like the Arjuna and the Krishna, the Pandavas, the Kauravas, actually never happened. But then you should understand how Indian tradition is laid out, whereby there's different categories for everything. There's the Vedas, the Upanishads for knowledge and karma kand. And then there's the Puranas, yeah, that show you things, but metaphorically more. Like the Puranas are there for that. And then there's something like Itihasa, where Mahabharata is, where Ramayana is. And see, Itihasa has the word iti in it. Means what Itihas actually is that Purvam Vrutam means that it should have happened before. And that's the word iti, meaning that this had happened. And we have had an end for that. So that is what iti is meaning. That means what Mahabharata and Ramayana and such texts are in line with is that something that actually happened. Something where there was a battleground and this really happened, the Gita really happened. If it was a conceptual thing or metaphorical thing only, like this is something that happened and then you can take it metaphorically, that's fine. But then if it's only metaphorical, only something that may have happened in some abstract way, the rishis would have put it in the Purana aspect, because that category is there. And if something is truly metaphorical or something happened in truly abstract way, then the Puranas are there. But if it's put in the Itihas, it has that name for a reason and that category for a reason. So it's Purva Vritta.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. So Andrea, I really like your observation about battlefield, because battlefield is the context of Gita. You know, Gita starts with Arjun asking Krishna to drive the chariot in the middle of these two armies, ready to go at one another. That's where it starts. Also note the state of Arjun in the beginning. All the ideas that he has, he's confused about. He doesn't know what is right or wrong and what is proper. All his emotions are in turmoil. He's saying, how can I attack my grandfather on whose knees I grew up and my most revered guru? His hands are trembling. He drops his bow. He's incapable of action. That's where it starts. Where does it end? The last thing that Arjun says is that all my doubts have been resolved. I now know what I need to do, and I will do it. And Sanjay comments that wherever there is Krishna and Arjun, in that state, the victory and glory is already there before even the battle is engaged. Gita is about that transition. You can see the point in chapter 11, when Krishna shows his destructive power and creative power at the same time. All these are parts of the world. And only when you get attached to a particular outcome that this concept of battlefield arises. When you are looking at it from the center, regarding all of the world as a manifestation of the center, you see it's a very different perspective, and it's a point of immense strength from which you do the right thing. And it says, Karmanne vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadashna. That means you have the right of doing the right action, but not the right over the fruits of it. And that is the solution. It is a virtue ethic. You do that. So I think battle actually captures it. And look at how beautifully it is presented. This entire philosophy is presented in this context of the battle. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Really appreciate it. Next up is Marco, followed by Paul, followed by Joe. And I encourage everybody to just talk about what they got from these meetups. Even if it's a short comment, you're welcome. Marco.
Yeah, what I liked about the Gita is that like it gave the power to the person, like and also instead of like that and also that like how that we are the ocean, and I mean we're also the waves and the ocean, but we are the ocean, like the and also and also the eternal seeing the eternal in everything.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Marco. So this analogy of the ocean, which Yogeshwar used beautifully again and again, I think is very, very powerful. You know, we think of ourselves as a salt crystal with an identity which is separate from everything else. And we get attached to that. When we enter the ocean and become a drop in that, you understand the commonality of everything, and you are at the center at all times. And it is a point of tremendous strength or power, as you were saying, because it is showing you that you know, tad, the idea is tad tvamasi, that you are that. So that is Brahma. Tvam is Atma, and you are that. Atma is that. So thank you. Thank you very much. Yogeshwar, would you like to add anything?
No, no comments.
Okay. Next up is going to be Paul. Folks, go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to share your thoughts. I especially encourage David and Jyoti if you have not already done that. Paul, what did you get from your reading of Gita, and how did it change your life?
Thanks for giving me a chance to comment, and I will keep it short, Shrikant, in deference to the people who really stuck through and studied. And I think they were very lucky to have you, Yogeshwar, as well as Shrikant, because one of the things this reminded me of is, well, like Brian, I have a long history of trying to understand the Gita, I would put it, going back to same distance in time, and people like Ram Dass, who I really admired, people who brought these concepts to the West. And then I tried to go back, because that interested me, to the source teachings. And it was very hard for me to really absorb or get much out of. It was just a whole different cultural context. But Shrikant shows us how we can look into the sort of covers of the of the rituals and look, and I tried to do that over the years, and I would come back to it. And I kept coming back to it because I would meet people like Yogeshwar, who I thought, they're so devoted and they're so knowledgeable, and this guides their whole life. I have to understand this. So, and my overview concept of what the Gita means to me is this reminder I keep coming back to, that I need to, because the whole fall of religion in the West and all that, what it leads to is not just a focus on the periphery, but a belief that there is nothing but the periphery. And this idea of a center that is a divine spark, that's sort of like a scientific no-no. So, you know, I mean, in some ways of looking at it. So, but I was never comfortable with that. And I thought that was a misrepresentation somehow in my heart. So I can come back to the Gita, and every time I come back, including this time, I see more clearly how it can show us that. And it doesn't matter if we completely accept whether it was historical or not, or we can't accept all the cultural trappings, because if you can just think when you're in the supermarket, that person next to you has this divine spark that you share, and you can sort of study that and grasp that, and it's like mind-blowing. It's like radical. It's intense. And that every word, words like love, are so much more than the word, that there's this huge suite of knowledge that can't be captured by science, that's there. That's what the Gita reminds me of. And coming back to it with you for just a few days helped me do that. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate the comments. I will say two things. One, in terms of making Gita accessible. The primary reference that I used in English to understand Gita was Sri Aurobindo. I recommend that very highly, very highly. Both his translation, and especially his translation has all these footnotes. If you get an electronic version, I'm sure it's there in the paper version also somehow. But he really explains it, and he grew up in West and then went back to India. So he's able to make these ideas accessible. So I would recommend Sri Aurobindo as a resource. His Gita, just his Gita translation and his notes on some of the terms. So that's what I would recommend. And really appreciate your kudos. The most profound thing you said was that the modern world has forgotten the center, that they think that there is only periphery. And actually that is not science either, because if you look at the science of people like Newton or Einstein or Darwin, they are looking for eternal principles. They're looking for eternal principles that shape everything. What modern mind has done is that it has focused on trying, firstly, the focus is not on science as much as on transformation of the world and transformation of the particular thing. People end up siloing their attention on this particular thing that they're trying to do and put all their energy, all their thought into that, and lose the ability of actually seeing connection between the particular thing they're looking at and the whole. As a result, it is fragmented. So interestingly, when you go back to things like Gospel of John, you find that integration there. It is very much, there is the center there. When you look at Newton, there is very much the center there. When you look at Aristotle, there is very much the center there. So it is the modern approach. And you're right, because if you lose the center, all you have is the periphery, and you're always looking outwards and away from the center. Also, it leads to a crisis of morality, because you can't have morality without the center. It leads to a crisis of knowledge, spirituality, and you can just keep on adding things to that. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Folks, if anybody else wants to comment, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. I was wondering whether, Jyoti, did you want to say anything? Okay, I don't know, I'm not sure. Jyoti, if you'd like to say something, you can type exclamation mark. Let's go for seconds. Feel free to go ahead and type an exclamation mark. I know that Yogesh will need to leave in a minute, but we'll continue this. I'm happy to talk. We've said many things. Jyoti, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. I went to get the blanket from the other room. My room is getting cold. I can say one thing, that I have become so self-reflective after listening to your presentations, 18 chapters. It has made me a very serene kind of person. I think twice before talking. I eat my ego up, and I know I'm doing that because I do feel hurt, and then I get over it fast. What I liked the most about your presentations was the self-appraising system that that I never knew of, those 3 gunas. I'm always asking myself when I'm doing some karma, where I am, what guna I am doing. And I quickly checked myself, and I said, in order to reach the swastik, I have to now think carefully whether I'm doing it with some intention for myself or I am doing this to reach Brahma in myself and in others. And I think the whole concept of Brahma was new to me. I thought that was like reaching God, but that's not what it is. We all have, Brahma is within us, and that's what it is all about. And that concept was never, it was never told to me in so many words. So I am basically very, very respectful and very humble. And I say that to you, that thank you so very much in doing this for us. And for me, I have increased my insightfulness and I feel blessed. I feel like early in the morning, when I'm doing my spiritual rituals and what have you, I said, this makes more sense to me now because of Yogeshwar. And I thank you a lot. And now I'm going to continue a little bit.
Please.
And few things that I grew up in a Hindu family and they come very naturally to me because I've been the concept of detachment and expectations and what have you. But I think the detachment is still very hard for me because I'm dealing with the universe, with the world, which has so many problems. Those problems do come to me and I have to seek some kind of action. And detachment is not always possible if I'm taking some action. And if I have to take an action, not only when I'm taking it, but I have to take an action. I can't take a backseat. I have to be in the forefront and I have to advise people. I have to chalk out a plan for them. You just can't do it with detachment. That's my only thing about Gita. Expectations, yes, definitely. And I'm happier by dispelling the expectations from my life. So these are the few things that I'm still working on, but I'm so glad that we had Yogeshwar in our life. And also I will say one thing, that this group became very close to me spiritually. And for a long time during these sessions, I did not feel alone. I felt like there were people on my side. So, I only have positive things to say. I don't talk. I try to get soaking as much as I can so that I can think about them later on. And I like the comments everybody makes here because they also open my eyes and they are like a chapter in itself for me. So thank you, Shrikant, for arranging all this for me, for us. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you. So I'll comment on a few things here. Number one, because Jyoti is from an Indian background, this feedback is very important and it is pointing to many things. It is not just that you are from the West and people are from India and they get it. No, actually what I found is that most Indians do not get this. I was talking to Yogeshwar about this. Most Indians actually do not get the depth of Gita. And what they have are some ideas that are derived from it, but they are much more derived ideas. They are forms. And in some ways they have actual words, but they don't have the meaning behind the words. So you get some of the ideas that are absorbed naturally as you grow up, but the deepest of the ideas and how actually they are put together, you never get growing up. So it was a big discovery for me. And I'm sure, many people who studied Gospel of John with us made similar remarks. So that was first point. The second point is that of being increasingly self-reflective. noticing what gunas you're using. I think that's a tremendous, tremendous use of Gita. Because it focuses on consciousness, it gives you the tools. And it gives you the tools not as saying, okay, this is how you do it, because you see them used in so many different ways. Notice how many different times Krishna talks about gunas. First about food, then about bhakti, then about devotion, then about work, then about yajna. There just so many different angles of coming at it. Next one, I want to talk about Brahma. Most modern thought is dualistic. It holds that spirit and matter are separate. So Brahma means spirit. It is not there in matter. That's how it is. That's how most modern people think. Or sometimes they even say there is no such thing as spirit. There is only matter, only billiard balls bouncing against one another. What Gita is doing is that it is profoundly Aristotelian in this sense. Aristotelian in the sense that there is a unity between concepts and percepts. There is a unity between spirit and matter. And spirit manifests itself through matter. And matter is made through and is sustained by spirit. That view is very profound. And that's what Gita does. So thank you, Jyoti. Next up is going to be Joe. Joe, go ahead.
So, and I guess, and I do want to express my appreciation to both you and Yogeshwar for taking us through this journey. I think it's going to reach many more people than the ones that have just been showing up. It's going to be very helpful. One of the things that has also been interesting to me in really learning this is the distinction in duty and how duty is viewed in the Gita versus how duty is viewed in modern society. Like in the sense that you're obligated by some external source to do your duty. But for here, the Gita, it's like, it's part of you. It's integrated with you. It's something that you do and embrace. And it's something that you arrive to, like, this is my duty. And you understand why you're fighting the war in the first place, but you're embracing it. And that's a very different concept than the way, and David and I asked questions 2 weeks back to back, the same kind of questions. And it was just, but they're based on that. It was kind of our confusion. It was kind of like our confusion with understanding what duty meant in the West versus what duty meant in the Gita context. And I think that was a very important point for us to understand, because it's also, it gets much deeper when you're embracing something that requires a journey. You're embracing your core. And so I think that that's just that was something that has come up with a lot of people that I've spoken to the Gita about. They felt like it was more of a duty ethics, kind of like our role ethics kind of. And I said, no, it's nothing. It's not like that. It's very different. So.
Yeah, so what I would say to that is that I think the best idea that throws light on this is Paul's observation that the modern times doesn't hold that there is a center. So all shoulds come from the periphery. So you're just reacting to one another and you are being pushed around by one another. the idea of duty in Gita is all about acting from the center. So you understand the Brahma and you act accordingly. It is very similar to the idea in the West in Gospel of John. It is very similar to the idea in Tao Te Ching that you act according to the Tao. That's what you should do. Not dealing with 10,000 things. Because the modern world does not have the concept of center, it does not have that way of thinking. This is virtue ethics. Virtue ethics is not there it cannot exist without the center. It is a metaphysical, the center is a metaphysical idea. Metaphysics is regarded in modern thought as a faux pas. What are you ancient to be talking about metaphysics? And that's what the idea of center is about. Great observation. Go ahead and type exclamation mark, anybody, if you want to add anything. This has been just so amazing discussion. I really like all the comments that everybody had. And Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow on that, I want to go back and watch the one that you did that covered the part where Krishna reveals himself to Arjuna. I want to hear what you guys talked about that day, because this discussion reminds me of it, because back to the supermarket, like just this thought that the person next to you is Krishna, is all of those things, is the impossible universe all exploding if you could see it in a spark of consciousness. And that's the part that like they say to you what you said, the Western certain schools will go, oh, there, you're in some historical antiquity, imaginatory state. But I believe that that's a more realistic view of what the universe really is compared to all our little shields and intellectual concepts and language words and everything. That idea is closer to reality. So if you believe that, and then you need these kinds of books to sort of legitimize it in a way, and it makes it seem even more true, so, and it cannot be disproven by any sense of theory that the brain is nothing but neurons. That's the counter argument that you brought up, Srikant. So we're kind of those of us who feel that that's where true inspiration comes from, that there is a center, we're up against a bit of a dilemma here with modern ways of thinking that aren't in that direction. And I don't know what else to say about that, except poetry helps.
Thank you, Paul. So I would say another way of putting it is that all these works, Tao Te Ching, Gospel of John, and Bhagavad Gita, says that there is reality, and you start with it. The modern view says, no, there is no reality. You just have impressions. And that's what you start with. It is a fundamental division. I want to say that chapter 11, what Yogeshwar did with it was just outre, just way out there. That is the first time I said, wait a minute, I did not even get 10% of this chapter when I went through all of it, using even Naneshwar's commentary. Because what Yogeshwar did, and I strongly recommend that, those things. I think that is some of the best, not the best, but in terms of, I did not understand what the chapter 11 was trying to do when I read it multiple times. What it is doing is that it is saying that the center is manifested in the world. And let me show you how. That's what it is doing. And the way Krishna does it is that he shows it to you in so many different ways. And it's such a rich presentation. But in order to get the full impact of it, you need to know a lot about Indian culture, because it is based on the Indian context. He's pointing out, you see there, you see Himalayas? That's where I am. You see this particular Rishi who was really good at learning. That's where I am. And what Yogeshwar did was that he gave all the stories fully. And that was just priceless. That was just priceless. So I recommend that very highly. And that is where this integration, this Aristotelianism of saying that the center is in periphery, this integration of form and function really shows itself. So you zeroed in on the right point, and that's actually where Yogeshwar did some of his best works. So thank you. Next up is Brian and Penny.
So I just share a thought I had during tonight's session.
Please.
Shows how the learning continues. We heard a lot about us being drops of water falling in the ocean, or crystals of salt into the ocean. Then it struck me that we started out as being in the ocean, and then we became a drop of water. And we started out, if we were salt, the crystal of salt, we started out dissolved in the ocean, and then we became the crystal. So just we're getting back to where we were when we I guess when we stop seeing ourselves as drops or crystals.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. So folks, what we are going to do next is I want to wrap up this series in the right way. It has been tremendously transformative for us. And I want to now start consolidating everything. Today, everybody spoke about what they got. Next, on Thursday, coming Thursday, Yogeshwar is going to do a chapter by chapter summary of Gita. Key ideas. So please review Gita. Please reread it or listen to it. It's very short, as you know. You can listen to it in 2 hours. Go through the entire thing. And for each chapter, identify what really struck you, what really remains with you. Then hear Yogeshwar talk about all the 18 chapters, and we will go ahead and discuss concepts. So try to formulate it in terms, I recommend that formulate it in terms of concepts or statements, like either a concept, like you can say concept of Brahma, or you can come up with a principle like Tattvamasi or Karmanneva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadashana. You have right over the action, but not over the fruits. Anything that really strikes you as being, okay, this was transformative in this chapter. And do that chapter by chapter on your own between now and Thursday. Listen to what Yogeshwar has to say, and we will have a discussion chapter by chapter. And we can continue. I will aim to finish that in one meetup, but I'm expecting that a lot more things are going to come out of that. And so using whatever happens there, I will go ahead and plan the Friday meetup, which is also going to be like wrap up of Gita. I will discuss with Yogeshwar about different ways we can, what's the right way to wrap this up. So let's use next Thursday and Friday to wrap up Gita the right way. And I have to tell you that, it's been a amazing journey, and I'm really grateful to each and every one of you, because the questions that you have asked, and the thing is, we can do, this is a very deep work, and each of us can do only so much. And if you actually hear what the other person is saying, their comments, their criticisms, their questions, it makes you think. So thank you very much. And I want to tell you about 2 meetups coming up this Sunday at 5 o'clock. Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, we start on Faust. It's going to be an introductory meetup, so you don't need to have read it. We're going to do a 10-part series on Faust. And at 9 o'clock, we're starting a series, which is very unusual, we have never tried this before. And it's going to be an introductory meetup about that series. It's about a book called Clear and Simple as the Truth. We were saying that truth is not considered to be modern. And this is definitely not a modern way of thinking. This is actually showing you how to write, how to speak, and how to think in a way where the center and the world are dealt with together. How do you use the world as the foundation to talk about the center, so that everything that you write and say is grounded in experience, and you can blend in the deepest of ideas in the presentation itself. It uses the ideas of metaphors that we've been studying in Owen Barfield, in Julian Jaynes, of how the brain functions using external metaphors, like grasp with the hand, moving to grasp in the mind, and then moving out again to grasping a business, which you cannot grasp with your hand. So this process of taking something which is perceptually observable, using it as a metaphor to point to something inside our head, a very deep concept, and then applying it to the world itself. Great example of that is chapter 4 of Gospel of John, with the scene with the Samaritan woman, where water, food, harvest is used to ground the ministry of Jesus, of saying how, what is the soul and how do you perceive it and what does it take? It talks about all of those things using water and food and harvest. This book is about how you can do that. What is the process of doing that? This is the style used by people like Mark Twain. This was developed in 17th century France. Declaration of Independence is a good example of it. Much of great science writing, like Newton's Optics, Lavoisier's Elements, are great examples of this style. And what we are trying to do, what I am trying to do, is to learn the style, which is very, very hard thing to do. It's a style of thinking, so you have to change the way you think. And it will change the way you speak, and it will change the way you write. So this meetup on Sunday at 9 p.m. is an introduction to that book. So you can decide for yourself whether you want to acquire this style. And if you do want to acquire this style, I'm going to start the meetups on Thursdays as soon as we're done with Bhagavad Gita. To do that, it's not going to be recorded. We're just going to go ahead and do the practice exercises. It's a how-to book. It's first half of the book shows you what the style is. The second half of the book, it's called the studio, which gives you a set of exercises to actually build that style into you. And that's what we're going to do for it. But Sunday, come, see what the style is, and then decide whether you want it in your life. All right. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody. Bye.